strategy, as it applies to a poker table, I think it might take up quite a bit of time. But with cribbage, there are some things that can be bought by your expressions. For example, you have two cards in your hand. You know only one of them would play. If you'd like your opponent to think they both might. So you shuffle them around a little bit and finally decide on this one. Even though the only one that would play is the deuce, the 6 wouldn't play anyway. But it might mislead your opponent into thinking that you've got two small cards and they might play their hand different accordingly. Some folks do that. My mother was a great one for saying, "Oh, shit." That meant she had 16 or 20. It didn't mean she had 0 or 2. It didn't mean she had what she stated. She didn't have that. She didn't have that stuff in her hand. She had 16 or 20. She was about to move down the board a big piece. Some folks have noticed that I say, "Gee, my knees," and I don't have nothing. Well, you see, I could gain a little bit with that strategy if I start saying, "Gee, my knees," when I got 20. Because everybody figures that when I say, "Gee, my knees," I got nothing. That's my habit. So the language you use, most players who have played the game a long time discard it. They discredit it. If it sounds like you got something good, they don't buy it. If it sounds like you got something bad, they don't speak for themselves. Unfold. There is something I want to mention, because there are a number of people in our club who do this. When they pick up their card, we got Sharpies. We got Sharpies in the club, and we got Sharpies especially in tournament playoffs. And so for some reason, some people have to arrange their cards with the small ones on this side and the big ones on this side. Now, here's what happens. I'm looking at your hand this way. You had it this way. So the small card's here and the big card's here. And this is your lead. What do I know now about your hand?
You got nothing smaller than a 6.
Exactly. I know you do not have a card smaller than a 6. When this shows, I know you have nothing bigger than a jack. For people that watch that, much better to just pick your cards up as they show. Just pick them up the way they show and make your discard, but leave the cards in the order they showed up. There are people who notice this. And if you're in the habit of doing this, they can take advantage of it. And I mean, you can't really blame them. It's not exactly the same as cheating, is it? I mean, I'm not looking at your cards. I'm not asking you to show them to me first. But keep that in mind. If you arrange your cards that way, there are a lot of folks who figured that out. And when you play them, they know when you pull this one, you got one card smaller than that. What? Yeah. I do want to talk a little bit about mental attitude. If things are going bad for you, don't become flippant and start discarding like this. Everything's going to turn out crappy anyway. Everybody has bad cards. Everybody gets sometimes in this game where why did this happen to me? But you exacerbate the circumstances to become flippant. And you actually make the results worse than they would be if you made logical decisions. Try to make the best decision possible logically, If things are going your way, it's a lot easier, I'll admit. If you're picking up great cards, then the course much. But you're not going to do that all the time, and you can improve your chances. You can pick up a couple games, maybe in 10, by staying on a pretty even keel. Treating yourself gentle. When you're down, don't keep kicking it yourself. If somebody else wants to kick it, you kind of control that. But at least don't kick yourself when you're down. The idea is to get back up and get on with it. You do have a paper called 6-10. I'm not going to spend a lot of time on that. It's called Applying Logic. Study it. You get a chance. There's some of the things that we've already covered in there. These are some pages from...
We got 7 as the last page.
We don't have a 10.
So you got 6, 8, 6, 9.
Nope.
No, we don't. 6, 7 is
6,
the
7
last
is the last
page.
one we got.
I'm sorry. Well, I'll make a note and I'll see that you get these next week, because we do want to move into this this final section, that one right there. Then we're going to be ready to get into the theory of 26. No. DeLynn Colvert did a lot of work in the early days, and he printed a book called Play Winning Cribbage. The first edition is dated 1980, so it's been around for 37 years. And the first thing he did was to establish the odds for a number of things that relate to the play of cribbage. Now, this 7-2 shows how many deals are occurring in the game. This is important, but you see what happens? Nearly all games, in fact, 93% of all games end on 8 deals, 9 deals, or 10 deals. You see how small the bars are on the rest of those deals? 11, 12, 7, 6. Look at the length of the bars on the 8, 9, and 10. First chart there, the top of that little graph. So the games end on 8, 9, or 10 deals. So who wins on 8, 9, or 10 deals? Well, down here you can see that dark bar is the dealer of the first hand. The dealer of the first hand wins slightly more on 8 deals, wins a whole lot more on 9 deals, wins quite a few more on 10 deals. The non-dealer gets a little bit of a nudge if the game goes into 11 deals. But the dealer has a huge advantage. Dealer has a huge advantage. DeLynn identified early on that the advantage of the first deal in the opening game, in the opening of the game, those games you'll win. Those games you'll win 15 to 16% more than will the games that you're non-dealer. So you win close to 2/3 of those games, but you can barely win 50% of the games where you start as a non-dealer. So it's a huge advantage to the dealer. And the premises of the game, therefore, the dealer knows he has an advantage if he gets the game to 90 successful. Notice the second little graph down there at the bottom. The dealer wins by quite a bit on the 9th deal. So the dealer knows who's counting first on the 9th deal. The dealer of the first hand. The dealer of the first hand is counting first on the 9th deal, and the dealer has a big advantage on the 9th deal. So the dealer is playing defensively. His experience shows that the best chance for him to win is to get this game in 9 deals. That's where the greatest success is for the dealer, is on 9 deals. You gain a little bit of an advantage if you can get it to 10 deals, or if you can get it to 8. As a non-dealer, you can speed up the game, and you see on 8 deals, it's almost even. But, so that's the reason, on the theory of 26, that the dealer plays defensive on hand 1, and the non-dealer plays offense on hand 1, and it won't change. Many times you'll have to be, if you were the non-dealer the first hand, you may have to be playing offense for 5 deals before you get to the point you want to be on the board. But that's how it looks. And then in 7.4, which is the next one you have there, there's a dealer hand analysis. It shows all of the points the dealer could score in their hand from 0 to 29. And notice the longest bar on that graph. 6. The longest bar on the graph is 6. Actually by quite a bit. Now that looks like 180 because it's a longer bar. If you notice 8 is 170. Does yours look like a 6?
Yeah.
It's a longer bar, so I would guess that it's 180. Right corner, it shows what the dealer average is for pegging, hand, and crib. Notice that the dealer's average for the hand is 7.9. Because when we get to the non-dealer's hand, you're going to find the non-dealer's hand is 8.1. So I want you to be thinking about why is it that the dealer's hand might be a little smaller than the non-dealer's hand. There's a reason for it. You've probably got it figured out. But we want to talk about that a little bit because there's a reason for it. And you talk about there's 220 ways to score 0. Well, you see it does show 8%. I don't know if that's 8% or 8 whatever. 8 is that 8 hands out of 1,000?
0.8%.
I guess that's 8 hands out of 1,000.
Yeah.
All right. Then hopefully on the back of that, you have the non-dealer's hand analysis. Now notice that the longest bar on this one is not 6. Longest bar on this one is 8. Why would the non-dealer have more likely to have 8 points than the dealer?
We tried to play defense on the spawn's crib.
Okay. The other thing is, the dealer is trying to put cards of value in his own crib. For instance, the dealer would have a 5 with a jack, queen, king for 9, but he's got 2 queens. So he holds the jack, queen, queen, king, and puts a 5 in his crib. So the dealer plays 8. Whereas his opponent would always play 9 on that. The opponent would never put the 5. So there's quite a few hands like that. If the dealer has a 2-3 with a 6, 7, 8, the dealer is going to put the 2-3 in the crib. See? So they don't have 7 in their hand, they got 5. But there's no chance the non-dealer is going to throw away the 2-3. They're going to keep the 2 with the 6, 7, 8, so they start with 7. So that happens with a lot of hands, by the way. where the dealer is sacrificing a few points to try and get something to go into crib. And the opponent is doing just the opposite. The non-dealer is more likely to keep the points they got, whereas the dealer is more likely to look at his hand in terms of, can I put something of strength in my crib? And sometimes it's a big reduction. For instance, the dealer could have 5-5, Jack, Queen, King in the crib, and he should. So he's got 8 points in his hand where he could have had 12. The non-dealer is never going to break up those 2 jacks and 2 5s. So the non-dealer is going to have 12 in that hand all the time, whereas the dealer would play 8. So sometimes there's quite a difference in how those sort out. And then that shows you down in the corner, right corner, it shows the pegging 2.1 and the hand of 8.1. Now, if you'll remember, back when, class or two earlier, I showed on hundreds of games what I pegged as a non-dealer and what dealer. And on a whole long line of numbers, for the non-dealer, 1.7, 1.8, 1.6, 1.9, there were only 2 numbers in the whole line. There were 2 or better. And that's one of the problems with this 10.1. I play the Cribbage Prof, 1,000-game series. Now, the Cribbage Prof, statistically, because of the algorithms built into it, plays his cards in a way to maximize the pegging. He doesn't get 2.0. He doesn't get 2.1. He gets 1.8, and we tie. I tie at 1.8. I don't get 2. I don't get 2.1. I don't get 2.2. I get 1.8. And you'll find as we move along here how that becomes important and why you need to be aware of that short game. Because it's much easier to try to make up a few holes on First Street than it is on Fourth. Whole lot easier. But you see the difference on why the dealer hand might be smaller than the non-dealer's hand? You see how that works? Two different games going on all the time. Dealer and non-dealer. And you see here on 7.5, you've got a graph that shows dealer hand analysis, number of points scored. You see how that works out? The theory of 20, the longest bar on that graph is 15. So if you take the 10 that the non-dealer has, you're talking about basically the theory of 26. Or 16 as the dealer, 9 or 10 as the non-dealer. On the back of that sheet, you might hear me talk about this a lot, because one thing I try to do when I observe people playing, and down there when the opponent needs 11 or 12 to get out, counting first, there's a lot of people that believe the game is over. Hey, the odds say that it's not. The odds say you're going to play another hand. And this shows that. What's the odds of holding the non-dealer to 9? Even. What's the odds when you start looking at the others? 12, 3 to 1. I mean, if they need 12, I'd be willing to take my chance. Those are pretty good odds that they won't get out. Now, it's true you could deal them like I do sometimes, 2 7s and 2 8s. I mean, they don't need the card. Well, so it's a queen of clubs. They got the 12. But there's a whole lot more hands that won't make 12 than will. So don't despair when you see that idea what these odds are. What was 17 or 18? Yeah. How about if you need 23 to get out? 77 to 1. You're going to have to play a lot of cribbage to get those 23. And then you can see what it is for the dealer. Now the dealer, because of the crib and the pegging advantage the dealer has, it gets to be, see, the dealer is, the odds are even at 16. The dealer's needing 16, the odds are even. Where they're 9 for the non-dealer. So you're talking about a lot of extra firepower going for the dealer. I use this chart quite frequently. How many of you bother to look at Cribbage Hand of the Day? Yeah, it's terrific. If you get a chance, actually it's one of the links on www.cribbage.org. One of the cribbage links is Cribbage Hand of the Day, Hand of the Day. And I mention quite regularly these percentages because they match very close to what I've found in keeping a lot of records for many years. So I think that's good material. It's right on target. And if you're the person who thinks your opponent is automatically out because they need 10, play it defensive. Don't give them pegs. Make them get to 10 by the score of their hand. Most of the time they won't have it. But if you give them a couple pegs, that cuts it. So make them get the game by the score of the cards, not because you got careless with the pegs. Now you notice the next one is 7-6. Crib hand analysis. What's the longest bar on the graph? 2. 2. And yet people are amazed when they turn the crib and it's 2. 2 is the most frequent count in the crib. And you see it, actually 4 is the next one. But 2 has 4 by quite a bit. And you notice, wow, 80 out of 1,000? That's almost 10%. 12.
Almost 1%. No, almost 10.
No, it's almost 10. If it have to be 100. So it's 8% on 1,000. But that's quite a few that are zeros. And one of the things I always say, you know, there's 200 to score 0. When you turn a crib for 1 point, wow. How many ways are there to score 1? 4. They all look like a jack. So you're 55 times more likely to have 0 than you are 1. So be really grateful for those 1s because there's 55 times as many zeros. On the back of that sheet is something called margin of winning analysis. And this is an interesting piece of work to DeLynn. You've probably heard me talk earlier about how narrow the band is in percentages between the poorest cribbage player and the best. See, the poorest cribbage player, if you looked in your club statistics, for instance, and you looked at where the poorest player was in terms of their batting average, it's probably about 330. And if you looked at where the best player is over time, it's probably about 58 or 59. So you've got a range from 33 to 58 or 59, 26 points between the worst and the best. And that's true if you look at the tournament play for national championship rating points. It's also true. The national champion seldom win 60% of their games. They usually win 58 or 59%. So we're not talking about a scale of 100. We're talking about a scale that goes from about 33 to 59. And so when you improve your winning percentage by a point, what does that do? If you take your margin of victory, I'll share some information with you later because I did this for 1,000 games. But if you take your margin of victory, your average margin of victory, you can actually calculate see across the bottom, you've got this average point margin per game across the bottom. And then it goes over here to what your winning percentage is in the long bar on the left side of the sheet. If you look here, if your average point margin per game is 3 points, you're winning 56% of your games. Now, if you could increase that to 8 or what would that do?
Gets you close to 60%.
Anyway, when we get into that, you'll see that the point margin, a lot of games is not as much as you might think it is. If you start throwing if you throw the extremes out, if you take, let's say 100 games, and you throw the 10 out on the top where you just went mad with your scores, and you throw the 10 out on the bottom where you had diddly squat in those games and got beat by a bunch, and you took the 80 that were left, you would get a really good idea of what your true margin of winning is. And the huge wins distort the figures. Huge losses also distort the figures. So I want you to take a close look at this odd information, the percentiles. Take a close look at that, because when we start next week, I'm going to have some whiteboards out here, and the zones are going to be marked. And we'll talk a little bit about the theory of 26, but it's based, what's here in terms of dealer hand size, grip size, non-dealer hand size. This theory of 26 is based on these few pages of statistics. Anyway, Colvert applied this theory of 26, that it should improve your winning percentage by 6%. Well, that don't sound like much, does it? If you're winning 49 now, and you applied this theory to your play consistently, didn't play hunches, he emphasizes that, and I have tried to mention it 2 or 3 times myself. He mentions it's very important not to play hunches, play the numbers. If you do that, improve your game by 6%, 6% on the win. That's a huge increase when you're thinking, maybe you're at 50% now, and you move it to 56, that's a huge increase. In a club, that would move you from mediocrity to among the stronger players in the group. And that's what we're hoping you'll do. And DeLynn Colvert, who's considered the world's greatest cribbage player, and he is the dandy, mentions that his winning average is 58.1%. We were talking about this scale, 33 to 59. He fits right in the scale. You're not that far off if you take the game seriously. It's a very complex game. has a lot of nuances to it. In fact, I don't know all there is to know about it. I'm still learning. In fact, somebody asked me, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? I said, there isn't one. There's only a tunnel. And every once in a while along the way, you pick up a little bit of knowledge, and it allows you to pop a little window open on the side of the tunnel so you can let a little light shine in. And sometimes that little bit of knowledge opens into a pretty wide range of light, knowledge, enlightenment, perspective. But you never quite get it all. You can't live long enough to do that. And the challenge is keep improving your game. Keep improving your game. It's not like water skiing. Is anybody here water skis? You still do? How long ago did you quit?
40 years.
40 years. But you're still playing cribbage. Now, that's great. See, this is a lifetime pursuit. This is something you can do as long as you can crawl to the table. In fact, there are some people that come and grab you in the parking lot if you can't even crawl, and they'll escort you to the table. So this is something you can do as long as you live. If you keep this, you can play cribbage. So it's a game with lifetime pursuit. Now, by applying the theory of 26, you will improve your chances for success with players of all levels of ability. Of course, you will notice real quickly with those who are just mediocre players, you will notice real quickly the edge you have because of that knowledge. The last paragraph is very well stated by DeLynn, 7.7. Cribbage is a subtle card game. One of the most subtle card games ever devised by man. Players learn the basics quickly and become competitive quickly. So quickly, in fact, that in a 121-point game, average players are actually dueling over the 10 points or so, controlled by the players. See, by controlled by the players, that has to do with the pegging, has to do with the discarding. But that's a pretty small number of those points in 121. But by mastering those, you can improve your winning percentage by 6 percentage points. Anyway, that's the basis of the theory of 26. Who's got a time check? I left my watch at home today.
5 to 8, 5 days.
Yeah. Okay. You've got 7.8. Take a look at that between now and our next class, and that's where we'll start next week, and I'll have the other boards out here with the zones marked on them. We'll have the par holes for non-dealer and the par holes for dealer. And this paper kind of explains how that boards. And then you'll be looking next week at actually crib boards that have these zones marked on them. Any questions? Hey, today, especially appreciate people from Battleground that drove up for this class. My, oh my. I hope you get back safely and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.
Yeah.
That's it.
Thank you.
Good to see you.